Okay, let's talk about water quality. This is a big issue here. From a water contamination perspective, there are no governmental regulations or limits for more than 160 contaminants. Okay, so that's kind of scary when you think about it, because you look at, you see the signs, when you're driving into some cities, classified as a great water town or clean water, clean water town. That I don't think you can so much trust. And one of the examples I'll use here is those of you who remember Flint, Michigan. So Flint, Michigan had high levels of lead that was leading to massive health issues, okay? And one of the reasons why is their piping was old. The infrastructure of the city's piping system was old, and it was leaching lead into the water. Now, older cities have lead solder on their pipes, and that can leach. The older it gets, it leaches. And so it leaches into the water. And, and if you're drinking it, what do we do with lead? Well, generally, when we get excessive lead, we shove it into our bones. Excuse my bone diagram, but that's my bone. So lead goes into the bone. Generally, it competes with calcium for uptake into the bone. So lead will displace calcium and make your bones more brittle, but also create a toxic bone. And ladies, and this is true of men, but it's really true of ladies, is that lead, will leach as you get kind of 38 to 40 and your bone mass slowly starts to decline naturally. The lead leaches back into your blood, and so now you're getting lead contamination of your blood. And remember that lead, as a metal, as a heavy metal, displaces iron, so it can affect your hemoglobin and your oxygen carriage, displaces calcium, displaces magnesium, it can displace zinc and copper. So lead can really do a number on your minerals. And so this is a common contaminant in water. One of the things, this is one of the reasons why with the way that we live in this world today, there's so many different chemicals that we're exposed to. There's so many different heavy and toxic metals that we're exposed to. It's not just lead. Other metals that we get exposed to on a common basis, nickel. So we get nickel, we get cesium. These are commonly, I find them all the time in people that come to see me. The nickel, the cesium are things that we can find in the water. And even sometimes I'll see cadmium. And I've seen some people where their water supply was contaminated by landfill. In landfills, there's a lot of batteries. The nickel dicad batteries leach into that groundwater and can create some contamination that can end up in your water. So this is one of the reasons why, those old filters, that people buy, those pitcher filters, the one I'm talking about, it just has a handle on it, and it's got like a little carbon fiber cartridge. These filters are junk. They're not very effective at all at removing these heavy metals. And so if you're relying on one of these, common household brands of filters, or even the refrigerator filter that has that, generally those are also carbon, they're not going to pull heavy metal out of your water. And that's a problem, because maybe you're already filtering your water and you're using that carbon. What carbon pulls out predominantly is chlorine. That's pretty much what carbon is. It also can pull out bromine, but it's not going to pull out heavy metal. And this is why those people in Flint, Michigan got in a heap of health trouble, because they were being massively contaminated by lead. And of course, lead it's toxic to the kidneys, it's toxic to the bone. Lead displaces your minerals and creates all kinds of health issues. And that's just the beginning. That's just lead, right? That's all we're talking about, just lead, not the other toxic or heavy metals or the other groundwater contaminants. So, drinking water today, most cities will add chlorine, they'll add chloramine, they'll add bromine, they'll have fluoride. And this is stuff that's being added. These are, disinfectants or antimicrobial. So they're designed to prevent, infectious microorganisms from contaminating the water, whereas fluoride is done because of the ADA, the American Dental Association recommends fluoridation to the water for cavity prevention, right? Which is junk science in my opinion. But that's what's standard, even though we know fluoride's a neurotoxin. Not a healthy thing to be drinking in large quantities at all. These are things that the city will add to your water. Now, this doesn't include the petrochemicals, the pesticide runoff, the chemicals from the ambient atmosphere that settle into groundwater. And what most cities do today is they use groundwater instead of typically ground surface water. So instead of pulling the water from underground where it's had earth to filter some of the contaminants out, most cities today are using surface groundwater, which is highly, highly contaminated by our polluted environment. And so what they do is they don't filter it very, very well. They add these different chemicals in, and then that goes to your house. I was reading a report not very long ago. It was a report presented by the Associated Press, and what they found was massive water contamination of drugs. So you've got ground surface water that's contaminated by chemicals just from ambient pollution. Then you also have medications that are being found in the drinking water. This problem has actually become so big that many towns have instituted a turn your medicine back in policy. So if you've got a prescription at home and you didn't use it all, they don't want you to flush it down the toilet because it's starting to show up in the drinking water. And city water filtration plants are not designed to pull this stuff out. In my town, in Houston, we have 42 prescription drugs that have been identified in the drinking water. This is after it comes to your house. This is after the city has filtered it, right? And of course, Houston is one of the largest cities in the country, in the world. But most industrial cities, it's the same. And the reason why is we have all these adults. We have billions of prescriptions for medicines being written a year. And of course, a lot of that stuff either ends up in somebody's toilet unmetabolized, so they're peeing it out and not all the drug is metabolized, so it's showing up in the water, or people flush their drugs down the toilet when they don't use them sometimes, and it shows up in the water that way. So, if you don't want to take medicine, then take this seriously. I mean, many of you are taking medicine involuntarily, right? And I think that report where that came out, they were trying to defend it. They're saying, yes, we found 42 drugs in the water, but it was in really low doses. It doesn't matter, because when you add multiple chemicals together, even in low doses, in biochemistry, there's a law of synergism, meaning when you add more chemicals together, there's a synergistic effect that's unpredictable. Now add 42 together, and you have a massive, unpredictable, unknown entity of what's coming into your body. And remember, you're 60 to 70% water. And so this is, a potential, your drinking water is a potential to deliver all these contaminant, toxins, pollutants, drugs, etc., directly into your temple. And so you want to filter it. It's very, very important that you filter your water, especially if you don't have a well, like an underground well. Now some wells are deep in the ground, and so again, the deeper they are, the more earth there is to filter that water as it seeps into that ground table. But even if you have a well, you should check your water. You should run a test on your own water for contamination you're probably not going to find these things, right? But you might find other contaminants in well water also. So just because you have a well doesn't necessarily mean that well water is always going to be safe. So you should check. My advice is, if you have a well, check that water once a year. Make sure contaminants aren't showing up in it. And if you don't have a well and you live in the city, you definitely need to get filtration in place. So, hey, don't forget to check out the rest of the series right here. Make sure you hit subscribe below. And as always, thanks for tuning in.